Everyone to the May 26th meeting of the Select Board of Walpole. It's now 7 o'clock, the time of our posted meeting, so I call the meeting to order. Let's all stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so obviously we're still operating in remote mode here and allowed to do that under the executive order on remote participation that went into effect when the governor, back in March 12th, when the governor put it into effect. So everyone's participating remotely, and as we have been doing for the last several meetings, we will have, a disciplined approach to discussion and to voting. So all votes will be roll call votes, and I'll just go around the horn as we've been doing to get discussion and votes. So let's move to our first order of business, which is to vote and discuss the Mylod Field lease agreement. So this has been on our agenda the last several meetings, and we've handled a number of questions. We've discussed, the possibility of certain other options. We currently don't have any other options in front of us, so the thing that's in front of us is the lease agreement itself. As I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, I wanted to have the full board here to vote on this particular item because I thought it was an important vote for our board to take. So we've got all 5 members here today, so we'll do that. Before we do that, though, I want to just go, as I said, around the horn one more time and see if there's any further discussion before we entertain a motion. So, Ben, maybe I could start with you. Any comments or questions or discussion?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah.
Yep, thanks. Thanks. Yeah, I think just, briefly, since I know that we've covered this a little bit before, the view of this as a sweetheart deal for a private entity here in town is exceptionally narrow. And when you step back and you look at all the things that we talked about and you review all the information that's at hand, you can see that there's a myriad of positives that have come out of it, not just for Walpole Youth Soccer, but also for the town, for the residents, and, probably most measurably for the kids that play youth soccer. And everybody's come out of it stronger. So rather than trying to cast this in a negative light and really say that we're going to shut this down, I think it's something that the board and other private entities in town should look into doing more often. If there's other private entities out there that have the town's best interests at heart, that have some ideas and a group of people that want to make a difference, I'd encourage them to engage with the board, engage with the town, and see what they can do. So I'm certainly in favor of extending this for another 5 years, and I'd thank Walpole Youth Soccer for all the volunteer work, for the facilities that they provide under this agreement, and hopefully, we can continue expanding it and making it a great deal for the town and the residents and Walpole Youth Soccer.
Great, thanks, Ben. Nancy, why don't I go to you next?
I don't have any questions, especially in light of the budget. Having somebody else take care of one of our fields is great. So, they've been good caretakers of the property. We've never had any issue. They've done nothing but improve it over the years. So, I'm definitely, more so than other years, glad that they're going to continue to make it a part of their budget and take this on.
Great, thanks, Nancy. David, I'll go to you next.
Yeah. Well, there's a few things in reviewing this, I noticed that the original lease was granted by authority of the town meeting. The town meeting gave the Board of Selectmen the authority to enter into a 20-year lease. Presumably, the lease was in return for some capital investments. And I believe that those investments were made and the property was improved, but the deal was for a 20-year lease. That since has been extended at least one time and perhaps two times. I'm not sure of the exact timing of this. So at minimum, I think we ought to be getting the authority to do this from town meeting. It's not clear to me that we have the authority. Secondly,
At least, I think I needed 77 minutes today. I think that's what I said this morning.
okay. Does someone else wanted to talk, or what's going on?
No, David, I think Liz didn't have it on mute. You're all set.
Okay. So, I am concerned about the exclusive use by one organization without other organizations having an opportunity to make a pitch for what they might want to do with the land. And that opportunity has not been granted. Other organizations pitch in and help maintain some of our properties. And they're not receiving similar opportunities to avoid the fees. There are many athletic organizations in town: baseball, lacrosse, field hockey, football. People who want to play cricket that might want to make use of these fields and haven't been given an opportunity to use them. And I still would have further questions about the cost versus what the town would have to incur, and whether or not there would be some accommodation made if the organization itself wanted to pitch in and do some of the maintenance. But those discussions will probably not take place. It's interesting that during the discussion of the fields in 1A, there was a discussion about how the fees generated would assist in the maintenance of the property, and that, it would generate significant fees. And in this particular case, the fees aren't just there. So that's why I'll be voting against the further continuation of the 5-year lease for $1 of the Mylod fields.
Could I just add something as a point of order, David? Walpole Youth Football for, I want to say, about 4 or 5 years actually did have a lease agreement with the town for the field behind Town Hall, and then it just didn't work out for them anymore, and they moved on from that. I wanted to clarify that. And then I do know at one point Youth Lacrosse had an agreement with the trustees, and they were doing a rental thing with that field that the soccer players also use. So I think it has benefited different groups at different times for what they want to use and what their leadership decides to do. Just so that, it's not special to youth soccer. That's it. Sorry.
Just to clarify, so I have future, you mean Ellis Field for lacrosse or Mylod?
Ellis had an agreement. And then we also do an agreement with baseball for behind the Aggie. Didn't they have one a few years ago?
I believe Little League might have done some type of an agreement back there too, some years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Nancy. Thanks, David. Mark, I believe you'll be abstaining from this vote, given you're on the board.
Yeah, I'm going to abstain from any discussion in the vote on this article, this item.
Okay. And for my
perspective,
I'm sorry, let me just say, from my perspective, I've been pretty well on record as to supporting this as a great example of a very successful public-private partnership. I appreciate all the good work Walpole Youth Soccer has done and the enormous good that it's done for the town, and saved the town a ton of money in the process. So I'll be voting for it. So Nancy, if you'd like to offer a motion.
Sure, I'll make a motion to sign the Mylord Field lease agreement with Walpole Youth Soccer for another 5 years.
So we're going to round robin the vote by roll call, I being, in favor, nay being opposed. So, Ben, did you have a
Second.
comment?
I just seconded the motion.
Oh, thank you. Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Aye is yes, nay is no. So Ben, I'll start with you.
Yes.
David,
No.
Nancy,
Yay.
and
Yes.
Mark, are you going to vote abstain?
Yes, I'm gonna abstain.
Okay, and I'll vote in favor. So the motion passes 3-1-1. Okay, our next order of business is a request for funding in the amount of $4,675.34 for a fiber network repair. Jim, you want to take us through this one?
Sure. Back on the week of April 27th, IT Director Mike Donovan was notified that a section of the town's fiber network had detached from a telephone pole near the high school as a result of the high winds that week. So Mike had to go out and get a company, work with John Hamilton in the fire department to get a company that's worked with us before, New Wave Communications. And total cost to that repair was $4,675.34. So what I'd ask for the board to authorize us to use the cable funds, it's directly related to cable, to repair this fiber connection.
Okay, I'm going to go around the horn for discussion. So Nancy, I'll start with you. Any discussion?
No discussion.
Ben?
Sounds good.
No discussion.
And then Mark?
I'm good, makes sense.
David?
Sounds good.
And I'm good as well. So we'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the request of Michael Donovan for $4,675.34 for the repair of the town's fiber network that's attached from a telephone pole near the high school from the cable fund.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. So all in favor, please say aye or nay. Or if you're opposed, say nay. I'll go around. Nancy, start with you.
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And I'm aye. 5-0-0, the motion passes.
Thank you.
Next is to a request to hold the Cami 5K road race and David 5K walk on November 14th, 2020. I'm going to assume no discussion on this one. Is that a safe assumption?
Yes.
Yep, okay. Let's go with a motion.
I will make a motion to approve the request to hold the annual Cami 5K run and the David 5K walk on November 14th, 2020, starting at 9:30 a.m.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye, or if opposed, nay. Nancy?
Aye.
Jim, aye. Ben?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And David? 5-0-0. Next up, request for Barbara Lighthizer to serve on the Trails Committee as a regular member. Any discussion? I'll go around the horn. Nancy?
None.
Ben?
No discussion.
David?
No discussion.
Mark?
No discussion, I'll just say thank you for volunteering.
And same here, no discussion, but thanks. Really appreciate the volunteerism. So Nancy will take a motion.
I will make a motion to appoint Barbara Leitzer to serve on the Trails Committee as a regular member, and thank you.
I'll second that.
And a motion and a second. Nancy?
Yes.
Who is that?
Aye. That would be my dog.
I love it. Ben?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And aye for Jim. 5-0-0. All right, next is to vote and sign insurance mitigation agreement with various employee groups. Jim, you want to step us through this?
Kind of a brief overview of this one. This had come before your board almost a year and a half ago. This is part of the insurance agreement where we changed the insurance a bit for the employees just over a year and a half ago. Part of the agreement was that the select board wouldn't go to wouldn't explore the GIC if we reduced our rates and implemented a cost sharing plan. And the employee groups will receive 10% of the savings that the town realized. The employees initially wanted to start their own savings account and distribute the savings how they deemed appropriate. After realizing the logistics involved with that, they came back to me and said, we'd just like to do it the way we did it back in 2015. So we went back to 2015, and the way that was done was basically the town takes the savings and reduces it for everybody across the board, so everybody gets equal savings in it with the employees. So pretty straightforward, and they were comfortable with it. They realized what a nightmare it was going to be administratively to set up a bank account with all of the various employee groups sitting on a board for, to mitigate this money. So, any questions?
None. I'm good. Jim, you're muted.
It helps to take me off mute. Ben, any discussion?
No discussion. Thank you, Jim.
David?
Curious, how much did we save, and how much are they looking at?
In line one, the total actual amount of savings realized in the first year was $203,459. Based on the agreement that they agreed to, their portion is equal to $20,345.91.
Thank you.
And Mark?
No questions.
And no questions from me either.
I'll make a motion to sign the insurance mitigation agreement with various employee groups.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor will say aye, opposed will say nay, and we'll go around the horn. Nancy?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
And Jim, aye. 5-0-0, the motion carried. Okay, next we have a vote to award a bid contract number 2020-25 for the Old Post Road School office/lobby renovation. Jim, you want to step us through this one?
Yeah, I want to kind of just first, but before we get into Old Post Road, I want to just preface things a little bit and kind of give the board an overview as to how I got here. Obviously, these four items is expending a substantial amount of money, and I want to just do it a little differently to get it out there as to why we're doing it this way. Over the last 3 months, we've obviously frozen a lot of expenses, new hires and everything else in a way to maintain our financial flexibility as much as possible. We put off bidding and awarding these contracts in March and April because we were just so focused on COVID and the emergency at hand. Don came to me in mid-April or so and asked he'd like to proceed with some of these projects now to take advantage of the summer months and address an issue he has at Blackburn Hall as far as structural issues with the columns in the front of the building there. So what you're considering tonight, I just would like to run you through each one. So Old Post Road, that's a lobby renovation. How are we funding that project? That's being funded through a borrowing item. Originally, this item was borrowed for $1.95 million. We have $358,000 remaining. Town meeting in the fall of 2019 appropriated additional money for this one, $225 from free cash. So we're not spending the free cash money in this article. It's just the borrowing money. So this will leave about I think I wrote 225 left in free cash for that item, and a little bit left over in borrowing. We'll still be able to award it and get it done. So any questions on Old Post Road? We bid this out, and it's for the office lobby renovation in the front of the school there where the administration, the secretaries, the stations.
So Jim, what if we didn't do it? What would happen?
The project wouldn't get done, get put off another year, and the funds have already been borrowed, so it wouldn't impact our borrowing at all.
Okay. All right, discussion, Nancy?
In general, I guess do you want to discuss them individually or just this one?
Let's go one at a time.
Okay. So I know that we need to, you've done a great job freezing the budget and staying on top of this, but also part of the economy recovering is having people work and getting things done. And, I think it's very important that we get work done and also help keep the cycle of the economy. So, I'm for this.
Thanks, Nancy. David, I'll go to you next.
So what's the renovation contemplated? What's happening there?
So I don't know how recently you've been in the front of that school, but it's completely dated. There was some issues with leaking within the last year or so. I was out there with Dawn when it was raining. The countertops are all deteriorated out there. It does consist of some window replacement that's alternate one in the front portion of the building, and just really bringing that front part back and making it more functional.
Are you putting extra security doors or anything like that?
I don't know off the top of my head if Dawn is doing that. What we've already done in that building is we've already done a boiler, windows, and a roof on that building. That's what was left over from the original 1.95 that was appropriated.
All right, thank you.
Ben?
Yeah, I'd echo what Nancy just said about keeping people at work and keeping the economy moving or getting it going again. I think that needs to be part of the cost benefit analysis that we do these things with these things, local contractors and getting people back to work. At the same time, personally, I think that we need to be very conservative in our spending. And I know that we've talked a little bit about the budgets for fiscal year 20 and 21, and I'm sure we'll get into those more later in meetings to come. But I think it's important that we be as conservative as possible because of the unknowns that are coming forward. So to see that all of the monies that have been put into this account have been appropriated by town meeting, I don't know that we as the select board should just be unilaterally picking and choosing what town meeting has appropriated to be done and what hasn't. And at the same time, I'm heartened to hear that there's money remaining, particularly what Jim said with the almost $250,000 in free cash. It's not like we're spending all the way to the limits on any of these projects. They're very much needed, as Jim just spelled out, and we're leaving some in reserve for this project or for other needs if it should arise. So for those reasons, I think that the overall financial planning for this has been really well thought out and is conservative enough to leave us some wiggle room if we need it in the months to come.
And just to follow up on Ben's point there, if you award all 4 of these contracts as stipulated in the packet, we'll still have $565,000 in flexibility that was appropriated through free cash. So these projects are going to be just about done except for the base alternate of Blackburn, but we'll still have $500,000 plus in flexibility if we need to deal with it in the fall.
Thanks, Jim. Mark, I'll go to you next.
Yeah, I'm in favor of this project. I mean, it's something we've known about for a long time. Fixing up the lobby, entranceway, doorways, all those kind of things. So I think it's good to continue this project. I agree with what Ben and Nancy were saying, that it's also good to keep people working. And I think now is the time to do it.
Thanks, Mark. And I'll just echo those comments without repeating them. So Nancy, we'll go to a motion.
Sure. I'll make a motion to award bid contract number 2020-25 to Northern Contracting Corp. in the amount of $254,300,000.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. If in favor, say aye. Otherwise, nay. Nancy?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
and Jim, aye. 500, the motion carries. All right, next up, we've got the award of bid contract 2020-30 Boyden School brick restoration. Do you have anything more to add on?
Yeah, just a couple of items to point out on that one. That was an original request dating back to 2013 to replace the Boyden roof, replace the Boyden roof and anything associated with that. There's currently $119,000 left in that account. The roof's been done. It was designed, obviously, and Don advised that he'll take the remaining $18,000 here, repoint, replace bricks on one of the chimneys, and he may need to have, there's 2 other chimneys he pointed out to me that may need to be looked at once they're up there. That's all.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Discussion, David, we'll start with you this time.
Yeah, I think that's great. And if I remember correctly, this is the project that Mr. Anderson took over, that instead of going through the state and having to pay for the project manager, we saved a lot of money, and he did a good job with the roof, and it clearly even was able to even save a little extra money to take care of the bricks. I trust his opinions and his viewpoints on the maintenance of these buildings.
Thanks, David. Mark?
Yeah, I'm in favor of this. I think especially pointing up all the brickwork on the chimneys is important. And taking a look at the other chimneys while they're up there is a good thing as well.
Thanks, Mark. Ben?
Nothing further to add.
Okay, Nancy?
I'm all set, and I'll make a motion to award bid contract number 2020-30 to East Coast Developments in the amount of $18,975.
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call vote again. In favor, aye. Otherwise, nay. Nancy?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Jim? Aye. 500. The motion carries.
Thank you.
Next up, Blackburn Hall renovation, bid contract 2020-26.
So,
Jim, you mentioned the columns on this already. Is there anything more you need to add?
no, just that the base bid came in at 93,000 and change, and that was for the front columns and the woodwork above there that's rotted out. The alternate was for the back columns. When I asked Don what's the difference between the front and back, to him the front's the one facing the fire station, the one facing the library. We're not going to fund it this time, obviously, because it came in over what the bid was at. So we're just looking for the base bid at this time.
Okay, thanks, Jim. All right, questions or comments for Jim? Nancy?
Yes, I just want to say that I'm very excited that this is moving forward. It was first originally identified in the original master plan, which is from 20 years ago, that we really needed to get on top of maintaining this building and preserving the building, and the columns were an issue then. I know we're not liking this, but again, it will get people working, and it's a gift that I just think, it's our responsibility to maintain it.
Thanks, Nancy. David?
All set.
Ben?
All set. Thank you.
Mark?
All set.
And I'm all set as well. Nancy?
I'll make a motion to award bid contract 2020-26 to Your Space Construction in the amount of $128,000.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. In favor, say aye. Otherwise, nay. Nancy?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
And Jim, aye. 500. The motion carries. Next up is high school partial roof replacement, bid contract number 2020-28. Jim?
Sure. So we're using 2 sources of funding at the time of this request. Originally, back in 2013, the town appropriated $705,000 via borrowing for the roof, HVAC, and waterproofing. We have $206,000 remaining from that account. So what I'm recommending here is that the board allow us to award a contract for $153,400. This will replace the original front section of the roof that's facing Common Street that wasn't done during the renovation back almost 20 years ago or so. So this will leave $53,000 in the borrowing account and $250,000 in the free cash appropriation that was done at the last fall, town meeting.
Thanks, Jim. All right, discussion. Mark, we'll start with you this time.
I think it's a good idea to stay on top of, especially roofing issues. I know I've had work done there over the years. You know, at some point in the fall, it would be good to take a look at all of our buildings and sort of review the list of what work is on the capital budget list going forward. But especially roofs, and we talked earlier with Boyd and the chimneys, it's important to stay on top of everything up on top of the building so we don't create lots of problems inside the building. So I'm in favor of it.
Thanks, Mark. Ben?
Yeah, I agree with all the points that Mark just put forward. I'd also thank Jim for putting all this information together. I know that I had some questions for him, but all of this information, all the sources of funding, how this pans out for the future is such great information for all of us to have making the decision, obviously, but all the residents as well. So it's a little bit of a primer, really, in capital expenditures with all these different projects we've been looking at. So thank you, Jim. I appreciate that.
No problem.
Let's see, David.
What's that?
And Nancy?
All set. I'll make a motion
Okay.
to award bid contract 2020-28 to Cape Way Roofing Systems in the amount of $153,400.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. If in favor, say aye. Otherwise, nay. David?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
And Jim, aye. 5-0-0. The motion carries. Okay, next up, we have a vote to promote Andre Delaney as a regular member of the Zoning Board of Appeals. I believe we have a letter from John Lee, the chairman of the Zoning Board, requesting that we elevate Andre Delaney.
Is it Andre or Andrew? I have it written both ways here.
I'm seeing
Like-
Andre in my thing. Maybe it's Andrew.
I have Andre too, but you might be right.
Okay. Could be a typo.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, discussion. Nancy?
No discussion.
David?
All set.
Ben?
I just wondered, I was looking through the packet. I didn't see, don't we usually have like a form that's filled out or some sort of information about the person or what they do, or
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's when-
So I reached out to John and spoke about this. I believe Mr. American's departure was kind of sudden. And he was really clear to the board that he, wanted to step back. And Mr. Delaney has attended the meetings. He's an associate member at this point, and it's going to be more of a seamless transition. That's what John advised me. So he's an associate member currently.
And also, we would have gotten that when he first applied as a associate member.
Thanks, Nancy. I've lost track. Mark, I think I'll go to you next.
Sure. I would just say thank you for volunteering, and I really do appreciate that he was an associate member on the board for 2 years. I think that's a great way to sort of figure out what's going on and then be promoted up as a regular member when somebody leaves. So a big thank you.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I also would like to send a note of thanks to Mr. American for his time on the board. The Zoning Board of Appeals is a very important board in our town. The work they do is very complicated and very hard at times, so really appreciate his willing to spend that time on that board. I think I got everybody. Did I get everybody?
Yep.
Okay, Nancy?
I'll make a motion to promote Andrew Delaney from associate member to a regular member on the Zoning Board of Appeals.
I'll second that.
Motion and the second. Aye if in favor, nay if not. David?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And Jim? Aye. 5-0-0. All right, next we have an update / discussion on the town election postponement. I know we've got Liz Gaffey with us, the town clerk, and of course Jim. So Jim, do you want to start and then have Liz jump in as needed?
Sure. So I just wanted to let the board know, we had this item on before we received the court order, which we received a court order late this afternoon from a judge allowing us to have the town election on June 27th. I'm pleased to report back to the board that we've been able to do that. Unfortunately, the legislative actions that we were pursuing really didn't go anywhere. And we took this action midweek last week, and relatively quick turnaround given the holiday weekend. Liz, did I miss anything?
No, I think that we have, that's exactly right. We tried the 3-prong approach, and it seems like we had to do number 3 to get where we needed to be to postpone the election.
So the notice has been posted on the town clerk's website. I had a couple of people reach out and ask about it already. I already forwarded it to them, and I let the whole board has a copy of it. So no action at this time needed on the postponement. I just wanted to let you know it's been acted upon.
Okay, that's great news.
Just one other thing. When reading the order, I do need a vote from the board. I think it's on section, hold on.
Is it a motion to sign the town election warrant for June 27th, 2020?
No, number 3 says the Board of Selectmen shall, following consultation with the town clerk, Board of Registrars, and town manager as to logistics and feasibility, vote to reschedule the annual town election and post on the official town website a copy of this order, which is done, the vote of the board, which I will need, and a sample ballot, which is also up there, no later than 20 days prior to the date of postponed election. So if you wanted to take care of that vote tonight, that'd be appreciated.
So
Okay.
moved.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll move that motion, that wording.
Sorry, I seconded it, but I have my volume off.
Thanks, Mark. Let me see if there's any discussion. So David, I'll start with you. David, you're on mute.
I'm glad we now have the authority to move the election. I wish it wasn't so late in the game. I wish that the legislature had acted. Certainly would have saved us a few $1,000 legal fees. A little disappointed in our local legislative delegation that they didn't get that done for us. But good to see that we've got this done now.
Thanks, David. Ben?
No additional comment.
Mark?
I think it's good we got the court order and can move forward, and Liz can move forward with all our getting all our planning finished up. Thank you.
And Nancy?
I agree. I'm glad that we've moved it. I think people will feel a little bit more comfortable with a little more time passed, and I think that will get us better voter numbers anyway, and that's what's important for everyone to feel safe when they're voting. And, you know, there's a lot of wishes throughout all of this, and, you know, we all wish this didn't happen. So, I mean, we have to do what we have to do and deal with what we have to deal with, and I think this is the safest for the town of Walpole, and thank you to everyone who's done that.
Thanks, Nancy. And I want to add to that. I agree with what you just said, so thank you. We have a motion and a second. So as we've been doing, aye for yes, nay for no. Nancy?
Yes. Hey,
Ben?
aye.
Okay, Ben? You're right. On mute, Ben.
Aye.
Thank you. David?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jim, aye. 5-0-0. The motion carries. And then the last item under new business tonight is review and vote to sign the town election warrant. So I won't assume. Let me go around the horn. Nancy, discussion?
No.
Ben?
No.
David?
No discussion.
Mark?
Nope.
And none for me. So Nancy, a motion?
I'll
Jim,
make a
could I just
motion to
interrupt
sign
you?
the town. Yes,
Hang on,
I
Liz.
just, okay, so I'm looking and I don't see any hours in there, and I believe the warrant will require some hours. I don't see any hours in the order, so did you know what you wanted to do for the election for hours?
The version I'm looking at says the hours at the second to last sentence, the polls shall be open from 8 o'clock in the forenoon to close at 5 p.m. Is that what everybody else has?
That's what I had.
It's
Okay.
not-
Oh, okay, I don't have that, but okay, I'm good with that.
I wasn't aware of those. That should have been, we should have probably read the warrant. I do not agree with those hours. I think the starting hours, if you just want to do an 8-hour shift, you could change the starting hours. I don't think you change the closing hours.
Thanks, David. Any other comments before we vote? Nancy, motion?
I'll make a motion to sign the town election warrant for June 27th, 2020.
I'll second that.
Second.
Motion and a second, round robin vote. I won't go through the protocol. Nancy?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
David?
No.
Mark?
Aye.
And Jim, aye. 4-1-0, the motion carries. Okay, that concludes new business today. We're now down to the town administrator's update. So Jim, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure, just a few items here. COVID-19 update. At this time, there are 240 total confirmed positive cases in Walpole. 213 cases have been completed. They're monitoring and closed out. That leaves us with 27 current cases undergoing monitoring, which is, for our situation here, a pretty low number compared to what we were dealing with. FinCom, they met last week, they're meeting again this week. Their recommendations are going to be finalized by the end of this week with enough time to put the booklets together and mail them out to the residents in time as stipulated in the charter. So that's good news. I want to get as much information out to the people as possible. Town meeting, we continue to prepare for town meeting to be held on the high school football field on Saturday, June 20th at noon. Just the 3 articles will be addressed. That includes the general operating budget, sewer budget, water budgets, and we're working on preparing a plan. We're going to have plenty of water available, ambulance on standby, plenty of disinfectant, plenty of face guards for our check-in workers. We'll have masks to hand out if town meeting members don't show up with masks. Everybody's going to be spread out 15 feet apart, so plenty of space there. And it's a work in progress, but I think we have a pretty good plan in place. I did get a request from Ricardo, who owns Jalapenos. Actually, over the weekend, he and I went back and forth. He'd like to do some outdoor dining just off the back of his restaurant. The board discussed this about a year or 2 ago and just really didn't go anywhere and decided not to pursue it. But given everything that's been happening, he put together a plan. I'm going to walk it with the building commissioner and Ashley later on this week. But I'd like to kind of get a sense for the board. Would you be okay with something like this if we came back to you in 2 weeks and said, here's the plan we have in place. This is what Ricardo's proposing. This is what's acceptable. And in the past, we talked about a simple license agreement just to address him, because it is technically town property out back there where his parking is. But I just want to get a sense before we put a lot of work into it over the next 2 weeks to get it in place for him. Are you okay with this?
Well, from my point of view, as long as we're able to do it, within the rules, within the town bylaws and with whatever state rules might apply, I think it's a really good idea. Frankly, I think we're going to be needing to do a lot of these kinds of things to help businesses as we, quote, reopen the state. And if getting outside dining in place helps, Jalapenos or others, I think, I'd certainly be all for that. In fact, we've had a few conversations, and Ben, I'm sure you can add to this. I've spoken with Mark Romeo, who's the chair of the EDC, and I know he was reaching out to Donnell Murphy, who was also on the EDC, and I think Sarah Khatib is involved with the work they're doing in the downtown destinations. So what I think would be really helpful here is, yeah, do the jalapenos thing on its own track because Ricardo requested it. So let's do that. But I also think we ought to be asking the broader question here about how do we move forward with letting all of the downtown restaurants, again, assuming that it's safe to do so, that set them up so that, you know, all the restaurants downtown could take advantage of something similar. It just seems to me that that's something we ought to be doing. So,
Well,
Ben, and I know you've had some discussions on this. Maybe let me give it over to you and see what you would add to that.
Jim, were you going to say something else?
Yeah, Ashley's been in discussions with, she's reached out to all the restaurants in town. Some have really expressed an interest to pursue this. Some haven't really gotten back to her, but whichever ones have said, yes, I want to pursue it, she is facilitating it as much as possible and making it happen. This is just the first one that's really come up. So sorry to cut you off, Ben.
Okay. Ben?
Yeah. So I'm in agreement, and I've talked with Ashley a little bit about this as well, and she's done absolutely phenomenal work on this so far. She's kind of a one-person band, so to the extent that we can get her some assistance through other committees or organizations, business organizations around town. I know you mentioned Destination Downtown is looking at pitching in and helping there as well. So the more hands will make light work. And it really is two different scenarios. One is now getting restaurants out there as Jalapenos requested, finding a way for them to temporarily and safely get people outside and eating in their establishments so they can open in that manner. But then also, and this is kind of further down the road, we're looking at how can the town formally, through this board and others, have a dialogue with the business owners and maybe some of the other business organizations in town to set up a permanent procedure for this. How can businesses do this on a regular basis, not just when trying to recover from this current situation? So I'm fully in favor of it, and I actually think, as I said, that we could put more resources towards it, maybe not at the town level, but certainly tapping the EDC or anybody else that can jump in. It's a fantastic idea.
Thanks, Ben. David, let me go to you next.
I'm certainly into easing the rules, and hopefully the ABCC, Alcohol Beverage Control Commission, will allow these establishments to extend their premises in a timely manner, so that months don't go by before they approve it. Certainly the sale of alcohol for those premises that have alcohol licenses would certainly help them get back on track financially, which they badly need. So as far as, as a temporary, I'm all in favor of giving some temporary relief, obviously, as long as there's protections for the people in the restaurants from automobiles and, cordon off the area and things like that, and even using town land where appropriate, as a temporary, at least for this year, measure. We certainly can discuss about, for instance, giving Jalapenos a license for future years, but for this year, I think, whatever we can do to expedite the use of town land, and encouraging, other places and other, businesses to be able to, have a little relief from their parking or other restrictions that will allow them to use parking lots or rear spaces or other spaces, and be fairly creative about their use of location. Definitely all in on all of that. So, thanks.
Thanks, David. Nancy?
I agree with David.
Okay. And Mark, I think I went to you. Did I?
No, not yet, but I agree with what's been said, and anything we can do to help out the restaurants and businesses in town, I think would be a great thing. I think once we do something with Jalapenos, that will get some of the other restaurants thinking, and I'm all in favor. I think David mentioned it, of using some parking spaces, help people expand patios or create a patio. Anything we can do to help them get through the year, I think is a great thing. I do agree that we should be making this commitment for this year. And then I'd like to bend ideas of having a group to sort of work through the issues of what do we really want to do long-term, but let's help them get through the year. And I think that would be a great thing.
Okay, thanks, Mark. And,
Okay.
and I would just echo, you know, the commentary of the others, fully supportive, deal with Ricardo and whomever else we have to deal with, and then let's get the longer term plan thought through. And I think there's a lot of opportunity here, and we just gotta, as a board, get our minds behind it and go do it.
Okay, so I'll report back in 2 weeks, and I may have an agreement hopefully in place, at least with Ricardo, and I'll have a general, maybe next update will include something with Ashley and give you an overall update as to where we stand with everything downtown. Last item is we got another 40B application in for Pinnacle Point. That's 40 units over in East Walpole off of East Street. That was submitted by Wall Street Construction. They don't own the property, but they're pursuing an application at this point with, it hasn't even gone to the state because I was wondering why didn't we receive an official letter from the state. The packet was just dropped off. So that's going to be something that your board will have to weigh in on a future meeting once we get some official notification on that one. So that'll be the stuff that we'll be dealing with. So that's it.
Nancy?
So you said who's the applicant? Who owns the land?
Wall Street Development Corp. They are the ones who are building Burns Ave, and they're building Dupee Street, the smaller unit on Dupee Street.
So doesn't the owner of the land have to put in the application though? Or
No, it was explained to me that there was a purchase and sale agreement in place. So he doesn't own the property, but he's pursuing it.
oh, and where on Pinnacle?
Pinnacle Point, that's in East Walpole over near
Yeah.
the pond in back there, near the Jimmy's Pizza.
I didn't realize there was enough room. Is it at the beginning?
No, it's wedged in there between those townhouses. It's about 4 acres.
Okay. Who owns that now?
The Hassenjägers.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks. I'm sorry, I've been a little out of it.
Okay. Thanks, Nancy. Any other comments, David?
All set.
Mark?
No comments.
Ben?
Yeah, I just had one question, Jim, about the about Springtown meeting and the plan and the procedures that you were talking about, and I appreciate all that information, and I think that there's a lot more questions than answers out there at this point. Not that you don't have the answer, but a lot of people have questions about the procedures and are masks going to be required and what's going to be set up. So the sooner we can get that out to RTMs and residents, the better, so people know what to expect.
Sure. As far as masks, the chief and Melissa and I are kind of working through that. We just got some new regulations literally this afternoon that may impact those large type of outdoor gatherings. Basically saying if you keep the social distance and you're outside, you're not required to wear the masks. You know, you can if you want, it's your preference, but that was just some clarification they sent to cities and towns today. So much more to come.
Yeah.
If I may, Ben, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt Ben.
Go ahead,
Go
David.
ahead, I'm all.
Perhaps because some people will just want to have social distancing and not wear masks, maybe you can establish an area where you can just sit socially distanced without masks. And those people who don't want to be around people without masks on can sit in a separate area, and that way they might avoid any conflict.
Okay, I like it.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Ben, did you want to say something else?
No, I've gotten questions about if electronic voting is going to be used, how much input and discussion is going to be allowed, detailed questions. So
I can answer.
when the plan is in place.
I can answer electronic voting. No, that's not going to be used. I checked with Dan because we need to give a certain amount of time to the company that's based in Orlando that handles that. So no electronic voting. So Yeah, that answers that question. Ben, what was the other question?
How are you going to facilitate discussion and people coming to the lectern or microphone or whatnot for the debate or discussion points?
We've talked about, town council raised the concern over not touching the microphones and keeping them sanitized and everything. We're gonna have at least 4 mic stands for people to come up. But we're also talking about a way somehow to facilitate, basically, if you're not comfortable coming to the front and standing, can you somehow text me or directly with the question, I'll relay it up on the stage. Logistics still set to be worked out on that one.
Okay, thank you.
Mark?
No, I am interested in seeing all the final details, but I know that's a work in process at this point, so.
Thanks, Mark. Nancy?
No question. It can be done. We just wipe it down. We'll get through.
Hey, Liz, I thought I'd go over to you as our town clerk. Anything that you want to add to this part of the conversation?
No, I think Jim stated it all. We did go over all the points that you guys are asking the questions of, seating and the masks and the check-in. There will be more information sent out to the RTMs, especially from my office, because we have decided that we're going to do a timed check-in. So we will finalize how we're going to do that, and we will let all the RTMs be aware of how that whole process would be. It's just we're just still working out all the kinks, but we do have a plan.
Thanks, Liz. Okay, Jim, back to you.
No, that was it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Good update, good discussion. So I think our last order of business is to review and approve the minutes of the May 12th meeting.
So I wasn't here, but I'll still make the motion. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of May 12th, 2020.
I'll second that.
And just quick round robin for discussion. So Nancy, any discussion?
No.
David?
No.
Ben?
No discussion.
Mark?
No discussion.
And Jim, no discussion. So motion and a second. Aye is yes, nay is no. Nancy?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And David?
Aye.
And Jim? Aye, 5-0-0. The minutes are approved. And that concludes the...
Can I make one little statement or ask one question of the town?
David, I think you went on mute.
Yeah, may I ask a question of the town administrator?
You may, yep.
I just had one question about the, I was trying, we were going through this meeting, I was trying to find, I reread the order and I'm looking for some state law regarding the hours for voting. I just want to, we can just have an update over the next few days from the town administrator as to the authority to change the voting hours.
So I think I can answer that. Liz, chime in here. Because it's a local election, the board can set the voting hours. We talked about at the last meetings, I think 10 to 4 was floated out there, but it's the select board decides what the voting hours are. Liz, am I correct in that one?
Right. The way I understand it, the hours are not stated in the charter. And so I believe that is, after speaking to Lauren, I believe that you guys can set, the Board of Selectmen can set the hours. We can definitely check into that to reconfirm.
Just if you can just forward me that decision from town council.
Sure. I believe she stated it at the last meeting, but I'll go back and I'll get confirmation from Lauren that the board can set the hours.
Okay. All set, David? Okay, so that concludes our agenda for this evening. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Jim, I just had one.
Sure.
Sorry,
Okay.
sorry everybody.
Sorry.
I just wanted to thank Liz for the PSA that went up on YouTube. I thought it was fantastic. I don't know how she managed and everyone managed to have that much information in 3 minutes, but it's great. So the more people can spread that around and spread the word, the better. So thank you for doing that, Liz and Jim and everybody for putting that together.
No problem.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate that. Okay, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Aye is yes, nay is no. Nancy?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
And Jim, aye. 5-0-0. We are now adjourned. Good night, everyone. Thanks very much.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.